White sands footprints. For over half a century, every archaeology student in America was taught the same origin story. First people arrived via the Bering Land Bridge, crossed from Siberia to Alaska around 13,000 years ago. They were the Clovis people, named after distinctive stone spear points found near Clovis, New Mexico in 1929. Clovis first model, no humans in the Americas before Clovis, period. Taught in every textbook, carved into museum plaques, defended aggressively by the archaeological establishment. Any claim of pre-Clovis occupation was dismissed, ridiculed, career-ending. In 2021, researchers analyzing footprints preserved in ancient lakebed sediments at White Sands National Park, New Mexico, published their findings in Science Journal. The prints weren't 13,000 years old. They were 23,000 years old. A full 10 millennia before the Clovis people supposedly arrived. 10,000 years of American history that never existed in the textbooks. 10,000 years of cultures, migrations, lives, erased by consensus. The birth of Clovis happened in 1929. Near Clovis, New Mexico, archaeologists found distinctive fluted spear points alongside mammoth bones. Radiocarbon dating in the 1950s confirmed they were roughly 13,000 years old. First definitive proof humans were in the Americas during the Ice Age. By the 1960s, Clovis first became dogma. The story went like this. Siberian hunters crossed Beringia, a land bridge exposed during glaciation. They entered the ice-free corridor between glaciers and swept south. Within a few centuries, they populated both continents. Any site claiming older dates was attacked as contaminated, misinterpreted, fraudulent. Careers were destroyed over pre-Clovis claims. Frustrated archaeologists coined a term, the Clovis police. They dominated peer review. Example, Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in Pennsylvania, excavated in the 1970s, showed possible 16,000-year occupation, dismissed for decades. Why the resistance? Clovis first wasn't just a date. It was a narrative, the heroic hunter story. Big game specialists conquering an empty continent. Admitting earlier dates meant admitting the story was incomplete, maybe wrong. White Sands National Park, New Mexico. Gypsum dune fields. Beneath the dunes, ancient lakebeds from the Pleistocene, Lake Otero. Periodic exposure reveals fossil trackways. Since 2009, the U.S. Geological Survey and National Park Service partnered on the Fossil Trackway Project, documenting Ice Age animal tracks, mammoths, ground sloths, dire wolves, camels. Between 2018 and 2019, embedded among the animal prints, they found unmistakable human footprints. Adults, teenagers, children. Bare feet, no shoes. Some tracks showed running gait, others slow walking. One trackway, an adult and child side by side. The child occasionally veering off, playing maybe, then returning. Footprints themselves can't be radiocarbon dated, no carbon. Solution: date the sediment layers they're embedded in. The tracks were sandwiched between layers of ditchgrass seeds, Ruppia cirrhosa. These seeds were aquatic, grew in the lake, fell to the bottom seasonally, forming distinct layers. Radiocarbon dating of seeds directly above and below the tracks yielded consistent ages, 21,000 to 23,000 years. The humans who made these tracks lived during the last glacial maximum, the peak of the Ice Age, when ice sheets covered Canada 2 miles thick. The ice-free corridor that Clovis people supposedly used didn't exist. Between 2021 and 2022, critics pounced immediately. The seeds absorbed ancient carbon from groundwater, they said. Hard water effect contamination. This was the go-to rebuttal for challenging radiocarbon dates. The White Sands team anticipated this. Between 2022 and 2023, independent dating was conducted using optically stimulated luminescence, OSL. OSL dates quartz grains by measuring when they were last exposed to sunlight, immune to carbon contamination. Results confirmed 21,000 to 23,000 year range. Thousands more prints were identified across multiple trackways. The prints showed anatomical details, toe spacing, arch depth, definitively human. Associated megafauna tracks, mammoth and sloth confirmed the ecosystem. Analysis of trackway distribution showed repeated use over time, not a single passage event. This was a landscape people knew, returned to, lived in. Prints showed families, juveniles, adults, sometimes a person carrying a child. Deeper heel strikes, uneven gait. If humans were in New Mexico 23,000 years ago, they entered the Americas much earlier. Coastal route hypothesis gained strength. People migrated down the Pacific coast during interglacial periods, bypassing ice entirely. Clovis wasn't first. Clovis was just one wave among many. By 2023, even former skeptics accepted white sands. The combination of radiocarbon plus OSL dating was irrefutable. The Clovis first model was dead. White sands wasn't alone. It joined a growing body of pre-Clovis evidence. Monte Verde, Chile, 14,500 years. Paisley Caves, Oregon, 14,500 years, human coprolites. Bluefish Caves, Canada, 24,000 years possible. Cheruti Mastodon, California, 130,000 years, highly contested but present. The new model, 2023 to present, humans reached Beringia 30,000 plus years ago. Multiple entry waves via coastal and inland routes. Diverse populations, not a single migration. Clovis was a technology, not the first people. A cultural innovation that spread rapidly around 13,000 years ago, but didn't represent the origin. 10,000 years of human presence erased by academic gatekeeping. Cultures that rose, adapted, and vanished in that gap. Nameless, unknown. Their only trace, footprints in the mud. For 80 years, the Clovis first model was enforced with the kind of dogmatism usually reserved for religion. Dissenters were silenced, evidence was dismissed, and an entire epoch of American history, 10 millennia, was written out of existence because it didn't fit the model. White sands was the death blow. The paradigm didn't shift, it detonated. We know they were here. We know they walked beside mammoths, sloths, saber-toothed cats. We know they had children, families. We don't know their language, their beliefs, their names. Footprints preserve behavior in ways artifacts can't. One trackway, a human walking in a straight line, a giant ground sloth's tracks intersecting, the human tracks then veering sharply, evidence of an encounter, maybe a hunt, maybe evasion. Another, a child's prints meandering, an adult nearby. Supervision, play, teaching. Why so few artifacts from this period? Possible answers: organic tool use, wood and hide, that didn't preserve. Populations were small, dispersed. Sea level rise drowned coastal sites where most people lived. We haven't looked in the right places. These footprints are ghosts, impressions of people who lived, walked, ran, played, and then disappeared into the deep past, leaving nothing but the shape of their feet frozen in stone. Göbekli Tepe. In the summer of 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt stood in the dirt of southeastern Turkey, staring at something that violated every rule of civilizational development. Massive T-shaped pillars rising from the ground, carved with foxes, serpents, scorpions, animals that don't belong together, animals from different ecosystems, arranged in perfect circles like a cathedral blueprint, each pillar weighing up to 16 tons, no wheels, no metal tools, no domesticated animals to haul them. Carbon dating came back. 11,600 years ago, 7,000 years before Stonehenge, 6,000 years before writing, 5,000 years before the pyramids. The people who built this weren't supposed to have cities. They weren't supposed to have religion. They weren't even supposed to have agriculture. According to every textbook, they were nomadic hunter-gatherers, living hand-to-mouth, surviving. And yet here it was, a cathedral in the dirt, built by people who weren't supposed to be capable of building anything at all. For over a century, historians taught a clean progression. Hunter-gatherers became farmers. Farmers created food surplus. Surplus allowed settled villages. Villages created social hierarchy. Hierarchy gave birth to religion. Religion built monuments. This was the Neolithic revolution model, established in the 1920s and 30s. V. Gordon Childe coined the term. Agriculture made civilization possible, he said. The logic seemed airtight. Why would nomads build temples? They had no time, no surplus labor. Religion was thought to be a luxury, something that emerged after survival was assured. Monuments required organized labor. Organized labor required hierarchy. Hierarchy required agriculture to feed the workers. By the 1980s, this was gospel. Jericho, dated to 9000 BCE, and Çatalhöyük, dated to 7500 BCE, were considered the earliest complex sites. Both were agricultural settlements. The model held. Then Schmidt arrived. Göbekli Tepe. In Turkish it means Potbelly Hill. The site was first surveyed in the 1960s by University of Chicago archaeologists. They dismissed it as a Byzantine-era cemetery. Just another medieval burial mound. The Tell, an artificial hill, sat ignored for 30 years. Klaus Schmidt worked for the German Archaeological Institute. In 1994, he was reviewing old survey reports. Something bothered him. The hill's shape was too regular, too uniform. He visited the site, walked the surface. He noticed something the earlier team missed. Limestone fragments scattered everywhere. Not Byzantine grave markers. Worked stone, prehistoric style. Schmidt's team opened a test excavation in 1995. Within days, they hit the top of a T-shaped pillar. Then another. Then another. Schmidt realized what he was looking at. A megalithic complex, massive scale, far older than anything in the region. Initial radiocarbon dates from organic material embedded in the mortar came back. 9600 BCE. Pre-pottery Neolithic a period. Before ceramics. Before settled agriculture. Schmidt wasn't looking for a temple. He was re-examining a dismissed site. And what he found didn't just contradict the surveys, it contradicted the entire timeline of human civilization. Year 1. Schmidt's team uncovered the first stone enclosures, Enclosure A and Enclosure B. Circular arrangements of T-shaped pillars, 3 to 5 meters tall. Limestone carved in situ, central pillars taller, heavier. Clearly intentional hierarchy in the architecture. The carvings stopped people in their tracks. Relief sculptures, foxes, wild boars, snakes, scorpions, vultures, gazelles. High relief technique, sophisticated. These animals weren't food species. They were symbolic, totemic. Some pillars showed human arms and hands, suggesting the stones represented figures, beings, possibly ancestors, possibly gods. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry surveys in the early 2000s detected at least 20 stone circles buried across the 22-acre site. Only 5% excavated so far, estimated 200-plus pillars still underground. The labor question haunted researchers. Each 16-ton pillar required quarrying, shaping, transporting uphill. No evidence of wheels, ropes strong enough, or draft animals. Pre-domestication. Experimental archaeology suggests 500-plus people needed to move one pillar. This implied coordinated labor on a scale impossible for small nomadic bands. The establishment resisted immediately. Between 1998 and 2005, critics attacked the dating. Contamination from later periods skewed the results, they said. Response. Multiple independent radiocarbon tests confirmed the 9600 to 9000 BCE range. Critics attacked the interpretation. Maybe it's a burial site, not a temple. Response. No graves found, no human remains, no domestic debris. Purely ritual space. Critics attacked the social model. Hunter-gatherers don't build monuments. Response. Then who did? The complication deepened. Faunal analysis, animal bone studies, showed gazelle bones dominate, but from wild herds, no domestication, botanical remains, wild grains, not cultivated wheat or barley. Settlement evidence, no permanent structures nearby, no houses, no trash heaps. Implication, the builders weren't living here. They were visiting. Pilgrimage. If religion came before farming, then civilization didn't emerge from agricultural surplus. It emerged from belief, from the need to gather, to worship, to build monuments to something beyond survival. Causality was backwards. 2008 was the turning point. Smithsonian Magazine published a feature, The World's First Temple. The phrase entered public consciousness. Academic resistance crumbled as evidence mounted. 2011, Göbekli Tepe officially received UNESCO World Heritage status, a site of outstanding universal value. Textbooks began revision. The old model, agriculture leads to surplus leads to monuments, was declared obsolete. The new model, belief leads to gatherings, leads to monuments, leads to the need for surplus, leads to agriculture, leads to civilization. Schmidt's thesis became famous. First came the temple, then the city. Building Göbekli Tepe required feeding hundreds of workers over years, decades. This created the pressure to develop agriculture to ensure reliable food supply. Religion didn't follow civilization, it caused civilization. The implications went global. Other sites were re-examined. Karahan Tepe, Nevala Chori. Nearby pre-pottery Neolithic sites with similar pillars. A pattern emerged. Ritual landscapes across southeastern Turkey, all predating agriculture. The Fertile Crescent wasn't just where farming began. It was where belief systems organized human labor for the first time. Klaus Schmidt died suddenly in 2014 at age 60, mid-excavation. Work continues under new directors, but his vision was validated. Göbekli Tepe's status is secure, the oldest known temple complex on Earth. Around 8000 BCE, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried, not by erosion, not by collapse, by human hands. Soil layers show intentional backfilling, systematic coverage. The circles were filled with rubble, dirt, animal bones, then sealed. Why? No evidence of conquest, invasion, or destruction, no fire damage, no violence. The site was carefully, almost reverently closed. Theories multiplied. Religious shift. A new belief system replaced the old required retirement of the sacred site. Agricultural transition. Once farming began, the hunting ritual complex lost meaning. Catastrophic event. The Younger Dryas climate event around 2800 BCE caused upheaval, and later generations blamed the old gods, buried the temples. Intentional preservation. They knew it was important, hid it for future discovery. Speculative, but haunting. What we know for certain, the burial preserved it perfectly. Without intentional covering, erosion would have destroyed the pillars millennia ago. Someone wanted this hidden. Denisova Cave. In 2008, Russian archaeologists excavating a remote cave in Siberia's Altai Mountains found a finger bone, a single fragment, the size of a pebble, extracted from layer 11, buried 40,000 years. They sent it to the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, Germany. Standard protocol: confirm species, log it, move on. Denisova Cave had yielded Neanderthal remains before. This bone, given the layer and location, should be Neanderthal too. Routine analysis. DNA extraction successful. Mitochondrial sequencing complete. Results labeled unknown, not human, not Neanderthal, not any recognized hominin species, an entire branch of humanity that had existed, interbred with us and then vanished, without leaving a single skeleton, a single skull, a single trace in the fossil record except for this. A finger bone from a child, aged 5 to 7, and the DNA inside it didn't match anything on Earth. Before 2008, human evolution was taught as a branching tree. Homo erectus, 1.9 million years ago, gave rise to various archaic humans. Two main branches survived into the late Pleistocene. Homo sapiens, us, evolving in Africa around 200,000 years ago. Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthals, evolving in Europe and West Asia around 400,000 years ago. For decades there was debate. Did Neanderthals and humans interbreed, or were they separate species? In 2010, Svante Pääbo's team sequenced the Neanderthal genome. They proved interbreeding. 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA in modern non-African humans. The assumption was simple. Two species, us and Neanderthals. Simple story. Denisova Cave shattered it. The finger bone belonged to a girl. Her mitochondrial DNA diverged from both humans and Neanderthals about 1 million years ago, meaning a third lineage, unknown, undocumented, existed alongside us. Denisova Cave sits in the Altai Mountains, southern Siberia. It's been excavated since the 1970s by the Russian Academy of Sciences, named after Denis, an 18th century hermit who lived there. Rich deposits, stone tools, animal bones, hominin remains across 300,000 years of occupation. The finger bone, catalogued as Denisova III, was found in 2008 by archaeologist Alexander Tsibankov. Distal phalanx, a fingertip bone, roughly 1 centimeter long. Preservation was excellent due to cold, dry cave conditions. In 2009, the Max Planck Institute began DNA extraction, led by Svante Pääbo, who would later win the Nobel Prize in 2022. They sequenced mitochondrial DNA first, 385 base pairs. Result, twice as divergent from humans as Neanderthals. This wasn't a variant, it was a new species. By 2010, they'd extracted and sequenced the full nuclear DNA. High-quality genome obtained from that tiny bone fragment. Comparison with modern humans revealed something staggering. Melanesians, Aboriginal Australians, and some Southeast Asians carry 4 to 6% Denisovan DNA. Our ancestors didn't just meet the Denisovans, they interbred. They had children together. And those children's descendants are alive today, walking around with ghost DNA from a species we didn't even know existed until 2010. In 2010, researchers found a tooth in the same cave layer, Denisova IV. Morphology: massive, larger than any human or Neanderthal molar. Thick enamel, unusual cusp pattern. DNA confirmed it, Denisovan. Implication: Denisovans were physically distinct, possibly larger-bodied, robust. In 2019, another piece surfaced, a partial jaw found in Baishia Karst Cave, Tibetan Plateau, back in 1980. Stored in a monastery for decades, finally analyzed. No DNA survived, but protein sequencing confirmed Denisovan. Date: 160,000 years ago. Altitude: 3,280 meters above sea level. Implication: Denisovans adapted to high-altitude environments long before modern humans. Then came the EPAS1 gene discovery in 2014. Genetic analysis of modern Tibetans revealed a variant of the EPAS1 gene which regulates hemoglobin production. This variant allows survival at extreme elevations, low oxygen. Origin: Denisovan introgression, gene flow from interbreeding. Modern Tibetans inherited high-altitude adaptation from Denisovans. Denisovans didn't just exist, they thrived. They lived in Siberia, Tibet, Southeast Asia. They adapted to mountains, cold, jungles, and they did it all while remaining invisible to the fossil record. We only know them because of DNA. In 2020, further sequencing revealed something even stranger. Denisovans themselves interbred with an even older, unidentified hominin population. Divergence time: roughly 1.4 million years ago. Candidates: Homo erectus or another unknown archaic human. This means Denisovans were hybrids too. In 2012, a bone fragment was found in the cave, Denisova 11, initially labeled indeterminate. DNA analysis revealed something unprecedented. The bone belonged to a teenage girl, roughly 13 years old. She died around 90,000 years ago. Her mother, Neanderthal, her father, Denisovan. She was a first-generation hybrid. Researchers called her Deni. She represents direct proof of interbreeding, not just genetic traces. Neanderthals and Denisovans weren't isolated populations. They encountered each other, lived together, formed relationships. The boundaries between species were cultural and geographic, not biological. This wasn't speculative interbreeding. This was a family, a child, a girl who lived, breathed, walked the earth 90,000 years ago. The daughter of two different kinds of humans. And she died young, her bone fragment lost in the dirt of a Siberian cave. Until 2012, when someone picked it up and discovered she was the proof that our family tree isn't a tree. It's a web. The revised model is clear. Human evolution is not linear. Multiple hominin species coexisted across Eurasia and Africa for hundreds of thousands of years. They interbred when they met. Modern humans are the result of this mixing. Denisovan DNA traces have been found in populations from Siberia to Papua New Guinea. This suggests wide geographic distribution, possibly multiple populations. Each region may have had distinct Denisovan groups, Denisovan 1, 2, 3. Despite genetic prevalence, there are almost no physical remains. Why? Possible answers. Small population sizes. Environmental conditions didn't favor fossilization in their range. We haven't looked in the right places yet. DNA survives where bones don't. Denisovans are proof. If we found an entire species by accident from a single finger bone, how many others are we missing? How many human lineages existed, interbred, and left no trace except in our blood? Herto man. In 1997, paleoanthropologists working in Ethiopia's Middle Awash Valley unearthed 3 skulls from a layer of volcanic ash. The bones were modern, high foreheads, gracile features, small brow ridges, the unmistakable architecture of Homo sapiens, faces that could walk down a street today without notice, modern-looking skulls in Africa, probably 50,000 to 100,000 years old, consistent with the accepted timeline, argon-argon radiometric dating of the volcanic ash. Results: 160,000 years old. At the time, the oldest accepted Homo sapiens fossils were around 100,000 years old. These skulls didn't just push the timeline back, they shattered the assumption that modern humans were a recent phenomenon. We'd been walking the earth, looking like this, thinking like this, for 60,000 years longer than science admitted. Before the 1990s, the old model was simple. Homo sapiens emerged in Africa around 100,000 to 130,000 years ago, migrated out of Africa around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, replaced archaic humans, Neanderthals, Homo erectus, everywhere they went. The out-of-Africa theory, established in the 1980s via fossil and genetic evidence. In the 1980s and 90s, mitochondrial DNA studies gave us clues. Rebecca Cann and Alan Wilson in 1987 traced all modern humans to a common African ancestor, roughly 150,000 to 200,000 years ago. Mitochondrial Eve, the matrilineal, most recent common ancestor. But this was genetic inference, not fossil proof. Anatomically modern Homo sapiens fossils were scarce before 100,000 years. The gap between genetic prediction, 150,000 to 200,000 years, and fossil evidence, 100,000 years, created uncertainty. Then Herto arrived. The expedition was led by Tim White of UC Berkeley and Berhane Asfaw of the Rift Valley Research Service in Ethiopia, part of a decades-long project to map human evolution in the Middle Awash region. Site: Herto Buri, a paleontological gold mine. In November 1997, 3 crania were uncovered in a layer of volcanic tuff, compressed ash. The first, adult male, nearly complete. The second, adult male, partial. And the third, child aged 6 to 7 years, nearly complete. The morphology was striking. Modern cranial capacity, roughly 1,450 cubic centimeters within modern human range. High, rounded skull vault, reduced brow ridges compared to archaic humans. Facial structure, modern, gracile, but slightly more robust than average modern humans, suggesting transitional features. In 2003, the dating was published. Argon-argon dating of the volcanic layers, sandwiching the fossils. Result: 160,000, plus or minus 2,000 years. This predated every other accepted modern human fossil by 30,000 to 60,000 years. They named it Homo sapiens idaltu, subspecies designation. Idaltu means elder in the Afar language, classified as anatomically modern but ancestral to all living humans. Detailed analysis revealed deliberate post-mortem modifications. The skulls showed evidence of defleshing, cut marks consistent with stone tool use, polishing on bone surfaces, suggesting handling after defleshing. The child's skull was the most extensively modified, polished smooth. This wasn't cannibalism. No percussion marks, no burning, no consumption. Ritual treatment of the dead, comparable to historical practices, Melanesian skull curation, Tibetan kapala bowls. Implication: symbolic thought, mortuary ritual culture, 160,000 years ago. Mitochondrial DNA studies had already predicted modern humans arose 150,000 to 200,000 years ago. Herto provided the first physical proof aligning with genetic models. The 60,000-year gap between genetic theory and fossil evidence closed. Critics argued Idaltu might be a dead-end lineage, not directly ancestral to us. Morphological analysis rebuttal. The differences between Idaltu and modern humans are within the range of variation seen in living populations. Conclusion: Idaltu is us just earlier. Here's the paradox. If anatomically modern humans existed 160,000 years ago, why does the archaeological record show modern behavior, art, symbols, complex tools, only after 50,000 to 70,000 years ago? This created the sapiens paradox. Modern anatomy without modern behavior. Possible explanations emerged. Gradual cultural accumulation. Modern cognition existed, but culture takes time to develop. Innovations are lost and rediscovered repeatedly until they stick. Population bottlenecks. Genetic evidence suggests human population crashed to roughly 10,000 individuals around 70,000 years ago, the Toba volcanic eruption theory. Cultural knowledge lost during a near-extinction event. Preservation bias. Early symbolic behavior used perishable materials, wood, hide, ochre on skin. Only later stone and bone art survives. We're looking in the wrong place. Most early human sites were coastal, now underwater due to sea level rise. The 160,000 to 50,000 year gap might be full of evidence we can't access. In 2017, a bombshell dropped. Researchers reanalyzed fossils from Jebel Irhoud, Morocco. Originally found in the 1960s, misdated. New thermoluminescence dating, 315,000 years old. Morphology: early Homo sapiens, more archaic than Herto, but still within our species. The new model became clear. Modern humans didn't arise in a single location at a single time. Pan-African origin, multiple populations across Africa evolved toward modern morphology between 300,000 and 200,000 years ago. Herto represents a snapshot in this process, already modern-looking by 160,000 years. The long childhood of humanity. Modern anatomy, 300,000 plus years. Modern behavior, 50,000 to 70,000 years. The gap, 250,000 years of anatomically modern humans, doing what exactly? Evidence for early complexity started surfacing. Blombos Cave, South Africa, 100,000 years, ochre engraving, shell beads. Pinnacle Point, South Africa, 164,000 years, heat-treated stone tools. This suggests sporadic modern behavior much earlier than 50,000 years. The revision became clear. Modernity isn't a switch, it's a gradient. Herto Man and his contemporaries had the cognitive capacity for art, ritual, complex language. Whether they used it consistently is a different question. Herto Man became a bridge, a snapshot of humanity in adolescence, physically modern but culturally nascent. And the bridge keeps extending backward, deeper into time, until the line between archaic and modern blurs into irrelevance.